Hey guys, today we're going to learn about a new property of exponents. This one is the power property, so also known as power of a power. So when using the power property, it states that when raising a power to another power, we multiply the exponents. So you can see there in the picture, I have a to the m, it's in parentheses, and it's being raised to another power. It's being raised to n. So what are we going to do? We're going to multiply those two exponents, and this would become a to the m times n power. So let's look at our first example. So I have x to the third power, but raised up to the second power. So the power property says that I'm going to multiply those two numbers. So this would be x to the 3 times 2 power, which gives me x to the 6 power. Okay, let's look at our next one. This time I have 5 to the 4th power raised up to the 1/2 power. So again, power property states that I'm going to multiply those two exponents. So this will be 5 raised up to the 4 times 1/2 power. Now when you raise something to the 1/2, or I'm sorry, when you multiply to the 1/2 power, that's the same as dividing by 2. So this would be 5 squared. And we can simplify that value even further. That becomes 25. Okay, let's look at our next one. So this time, inside the parentheses, they are multiplying. So I have a times a to the third power, and then that whole entire thing raised up to the second power. So this time I have two properties that I need to use. Because they're multiplying, I need to use the product property, and then I need to do the power property. So let's start with that inside. So we need to look at those exponents. That first a doesn't have an exponent, so we know that there's an invisible 1 there. So if I am multiplying, I would first add those exponents. So this would be a to the 1 plus 3 power, then raised up to the second. So I know I can simplify this to a to the 3 plus 1 is 4, raised up to the second. But now, because of the power property that we learned today, because I have a power raised up to another power, I'm going to multiply those two numbers. So this would be a to the 4 times 2 power, which gives me a to the 8th power. Okay, let's look at our next example. So same thing, this is going to be two properties in one. I have 2 to the 4th power times 2 to the negative 2 power, and then the whole thing raised up to the 3rd power. So let's first start with what's on the inside. Since they're multiplying, we're going to use the product property and we're going to add up those exponents. So this would be 2 to the 4 plus negative 2 power. But remember, the whole thing is still raised up to the 3rd. So if I add those up, 4 plus negative 2 is 2. So this would be 2 to the 2 power, raised up to the 3rd. And now I can use my power property that states when I have a power raised up to another power, I'm going to multiply those numbers. So this would be 2 to the 2 times 3 power, which is 2 to the 6 power. Now because this is a number, I can find an actual value for this. And if you put this in the calculator, 2 to the 6 power is equal to 64. Okay, let's move on to our next example. So now I have g to the 3rd power divided by g to the 2nd power, then raised up to the 5th power. So again, I have two properties that I need to do. I first need to do the inside of those parentheses. Now because of that fraction, that means divide, we're going to use the quotient property, which tells us that we need to subtract. So inside of the parentheses, I have g to the 3 minus 2 power, but it's still raised up to the 5th. So 3 minus 2 gives me 1, g to the 1 power raised up to the 5th. And now I can do my power to a power property, and multiply those exponents. So this would be g to the 1 times 5, which just gives me g to the 5th power. Okay, and then our last example for today, we have m to the 5th power divided by m to the 7th power, and then the whole thing raised up to the 4th power. So let's start with what's inside those parentheses. Since they are dividing, that is the quotient property, which says that I need to subtract those numbers, but it's still being raised up to the 4th. So 5 minus 7 gives me -2, and it's still being raised up to the 4th. Now I can use my power property that says that when I have a power raised up to a power, I need to multiply those numbers. So m to the -2 times 4, which is m to the -8. So that is the correct answer. It's just in a multiple choice test, you'll never see it like this. Anytime you have a negative exponent, remember that moves to the bottom of the fraction. That moves to our denominator. So we would really write this as 1 over m to the 8. It's no longer negative once you move it. Okay, guys, and that is the power property. Tomorrow we will continue talking about the power property. So for now, if you have any questions, just let me know.